How's it going, YouTube? Andreas here, and today I got a highlight video of my milestone of 100,000 hands in the great game of Pot Limit Omaha. And if you want to know what the biggest pots were of these 100,000 hands, stay tuned. Let's start right into the action. We got the 7s and 8s against a cutoff raise. We're gonna flag call here, could as well 3-bet here with the connected hand, double paired hand. We do not raise on the flop. We're pretty deep and we don't want to just isolate ourselves against, higher sets and some king, queen, jack 8, 10, king, queen, jack 9, etc. like top 2 in the gutter. Against that we're doing fine, but he's not gonna automatically stack off with it. So we're gonna wait for a turn card. Also, we don't represent like that many bluffs on this texture. Then on the turn, we actually turn the quads and we bet half pot to get called by also kings and aces and, some higher sets, which we are probably anyway get sacked off unless, the wrong river card gets there. On the river, we bet 2/3 and get check jammed down by a set of queens, which had a set on the flop, but we got lucky on the turn. Let's have a look at another hand. Here we actually go multi-way and check it back here with a double gut shot and a middle pair. I think that's quite standard. We don't want to really, bet here with this hand, even though we're going to have a lot of equity, but then sometimes they're going to have a nut flush draw plus a pair, and that's going to be fairly bad for us. We take the free card with a backdoor nut flush draw, which we turn here, and with the combined equity, you're actually going to stack off 4 ways here. And when you can see the known cards, we actually got 28% against 2 overpairs, a top set, and some flush draw plus something weird. We do hit actually on the river and scoop the $600 pot, one of the biggest pots won during the last 100k hands. Here we got the aces and we raise it up, get 3-bet. We are actually going to 4-bet after this fish here. Cold calls, he cold calls a lot of hands. And then treble, a regular folds, and we do get it heads up. On the flop, we jam for half pot sizing, and we actually see that he had the 9-7-5 for double suited with and actually had some gut shot, backdoor flush draw, and middle pair to stack off with this very low SPR, which is quite standard then on the flop. Wouldn't have called though before the flop. So here we're up against our friend Purple Pills here, who was also streaming on Twitch. And we actually do decide to c-bet this board with a nut gut shot and nut flush draw, and he does put in the check raise. At this point, when we do go ahead and c-bet, we can't really fold here yet. He's in the big blind. He could have a lot of hands that we're still drawing very live against. And if he has the 6-3 exactly or the 3s, that's a little bit on the unlucky side. And we don't have to necessarily commit on all flush turns. Now the 7 of spades also gives us not only the nut flush, but also the 7 blocker, which blocks a lot of full houses. He's going to have less 7-6, but more like a 5-6, 4-6, etc. because we have already a 7 in our hand. So that actually improves our hand. And, this is going to be a call down on my end. Jack should be, pretty safe. The cards that are probably the worst for us would be, an ace would even improve us, but anything that's very connected here, he could have 4, 5, 6, 8, etc. All those connected smaller rundowns. He's not gonna necessarily, defend 2 disconnected 6x unless he's something like queen, jack, 10, 6 single suited type of hand. He could have that as well. And now the question is if he does have the weak 6, is he going to bluff jam all in or not? He does add and jam, he could have a speed here for sure. But with the hand that we have, too high up in our range, we're going to have to make the call, blocking the 7. And he does show up with the 8, 6, 4, 10. So, was fortunate enough for him not to hit one of these outs on the river. Especially a 4 would have been probably a little bit problematic, but especially on the turn, because with a 4 we would have turned a straight. If he hits the turn instead of that, we would have lost the entire stack. Ace is double suited here. Go ahead and 4-bet, check the flop against Greek player. Coco is a regular, and I'm gonna get it in on the flop by checking first and for him to see that he has top pair, gut shot, and second nut flush draw. Quite a cooler here. He has a pretty good flop and can't really get away from it at any point in the hand. Here we're in a 3-bet pot, get donked into, and he donks twice, and we just call down against Steiner. I don't know, this is a recreational player. On the river, you know, on a queen, what is he really gonna have? I mean, does he really play 6s and 5s this way, or like a queen 6? Not really. I mean, we're gonna have to call and hope that we're not some miraculously facing a miraculous full house here, but most of the time he's just gonna have king off flush or something. And he has actually, you know, pure air in a 3-bet pot, leading just with the 9 of hearts blocker, which was quite a highlight, I would say, in 100,000 hands to be, you know, given this pot with a flop nut flush. Doesn't happen that often. Here we have about pot size left with aces and kings, and we do go ahead and give him the 3rd bet or even a bit smaller and get a check call. On the turn we have a king, we check it back. Think that accomplishes a lot. For example, if he has 5, 6, 7 or ace deuce 5, he could jam the river and we actually don't need any protection. So that actually, I think, happened here. I don't think he had a 3, but let's see. He actually had a 4, 5, 8, 7 for a gut shot, a pair. Yeah, that's about it. And he turned that into a bluff on the river, because he had the 8-4 also blocking a lot of other full houses that I probably don't have in a 3-bet pot, but still, you know, kind of cool to have it be having this hand here in the check back on the turn. With the ace, queen, jack 8, kind of a weaker hand that I'm opening from MP, and flop actually nuts and a redraw. He pots it into me and I raise him right away. He calls on the turn, he pots it. I do call, and here the plan is basically to win the hand in case he has ace queen here too, and the board pairs on the river. I have also a jack, which kind of helps a little bit, and I don't want to jam and make it obvious that I always have the nut straight here, in case, you know, he wants to bet fold some weaker straight. On the river we see a king. I mean, can't be too happy about if he jams. He goes out and jams, but obviously we're calling. And then we find out that he actually was on a pure bluff, which is also some of the advantages why you don't want to jam the turn. You want to give him the opportunity, the rope to basically jam the river. Here we do defend our big blind. The initial raise of check root, which is amazing. That means we always have the best hand here, almost always. He doesn't have a lot of aces in his range. Quite fishy player here in the cutoff. Check jam and you know, get it on a turn, only to find out he actually had 8, 8, 8, 9. Also a funny hand, that's why I picked it. Poker is not dead. There's like some really nice pots here and there. When you play 100,000 hands, you kind of find those, you know, really nice mistakes that your opponents make. Here we do see that 3-way, do turn the quads again, also the reason why I marked it. And here it's actually funny because this actually happened today, and we do get check raised when having the quads and then bluffed on the river by queen, queen, 10, 6, 3 spades on the turn that he didn't want to check call anymore because I sized it up a little bit. Quite a funny hand. Here, opening it up with a rundown, checking it back, of course, against 2 opponents. And then on the turn, we do actually turn a wrap, a 7, 8, 9. And we could have hit a lot of straights on the river, hopefully not one on a spade, but, you know, ready to call down basically. Sometimes also on a spade, he's the initial limp caller. Could definitely have spades. But then he decides to bet $30, which is an easy call. Can't really afford to fold straights here for that price. And he does have the ace 5 for, you know, like a hand that he turned into a bluff. And we take it down. Ace, king, king 8. We get 3-bet and then a call caller here, which is somewhat loose. And silly, I wasn't actually sure if I want to call 4-bet or I want to 4-bet here because he, you know, I didn't have a lot of hands on him. Couldn't really say whether he was, you know, mainly having aces, but well, we do go ahead and do that. And jam the flop for a third, only to find out we actually run into 9s and 4s here by Dodger. another regular who is quite annoying to show up with this hand here. So also some run bet in those 100k hands where you just can't do much when your opponents flop that good in 4-bet pots. Here we do have the aces again. We do get it in, and on the flop we're actually running against 4s and 5s for a flop full house, another 4-bet pot, so that you guys can see that, you know, these hands obviously happen a lot, and you got to get through them and just grind on. Here I actually think I barrel off with the turned blocker. Here I'm actually hoping that he had kings and he's not going to call me down, because I'm not blocking a king, and this is one of the nut flush blockers I'm going to follow through on, and he just casually calls with the turned check 10 of hearts. Yeah, I'm blocking like some of my flushes for sure here. Yeah, for a half pot size on the river. Can't really bluff with all my naked hearts here, otherwise, you know, I'm gonna bluff too much. But with the aces and not blocking a king, I think this is, you know, quite a good play, and we're gonna have to follow through with it. Here I'm doing flatting with the jack 7, check 6-5 for double suited. Bet in position against two players, also a little bit for protection. On the turn, I do a side and put in a half pot size bet, only to find out that he min raises and then jams the river. Quite a horror scenario, and the question is whether he does have enough bluffs here or it just shows up with kings. Playing quite a long time here, I believe, and then ended up calling. And he did have the slow played kings. Remember, he did not check raise the flop, despite having another player here, and just went ahead and check called in an SPR of around 9-ish, which was, you know, somewhat surprising to me. So yeah, ask myself, you know, whether king 6 is you know, really what he has, and I block a lot of that as well with having a 6 in my hand. I could have a better hand here for sure. I could have kings myself, of course. I'm not really at the top of my range, but at the same time, yeah, it's gonna be quite close, and it depends on whether I don't have clubs. So if he wants to, you know, make a play here, it's important that I don't have some clubs in my hand that he could choose to check raise bluff with on a turn and jam river. But, you know, most likely they're going to show you that hand. So I wasn't quite happy with the hand in the end, but, you know, sometimes it's going to happen, and, you know, you're going to have to move on and try to play your best from there on. Probably has been a mistake here. Quite fancy player, very loose. Some quite weird dynamic where I ended up bet calling middle pair and a lot of backdoor draws, and I actually do get one of the decent turn cards. And on the river I make quite a strong 2-pair, but also facing a jam. And then he ended up having bottom pair and yeah, and then nothing, and then just turned the best turn card in the deck, making him a flush draw and a 2-pair at the same time, and a backdoor straight here on the river. Yeah, quite of a level hand here against a player that plays 53, 35, 20. Usually wouldn't play like that against a regular player. Somehow ended up being a little bit of a level as well. So I also want to show you like the hands that, you know, ended up getting stacked. And I think that were like quite some big, could have potentially been quite some big mistakes on some of the streets. Here as well, another big pot that I lost. Spoiler alert, I did end up having a 0.5 SPR river spot where opponent then all of a sudden dongs into us, representing boats mainly here. And I'm going to have to make a decision whether he still has enough Jack X that he's just shoving here on the river, or that's not the case, and that I'm making the call with the bottom boat here. And he does show me the King Jack Ace 4 double suited that he was, you know, squeezing before the flop, which is obviously fine. And I didn't think he was going to have a lot of these King Jack. I mean, on an Ace river, I was probably going to fold, but on a King, couldn't get myself to fold, you know, given that the pot was already 270 and there's a 0.5 SPR back. So yeah, another hand where I did not end up having the best hand on the river. Here, quite cool hand actually. I do have bottom set. Go ahead and bet here, multi-way I think, and then on the river, on the turn jam into a quite a large rep. He has the king, queen, 10, 8 for infinite straight draws, and you can see that on the turn he actually had 40% of equity. This shows you the clear strength of these straight draws and you know, how powerful they are and how much equity they have in this game. And now, last but not least, quite a big pot. We're 300 big blinds deep, and we do squeeze here, check the flop, and then this guy pots it. I mean, to note here again, facing a player that has a VPIP of 89%. So on this board, I think like, okay, if he's potting here, he's gonna have a 10 plus a flush draw, a 6 plus a flush draw, very rarely a set, and then, you know, some kings plus a flush draw, very likely, queens plus a flush draw, very likely, jacks plus a flush draw, also still very likely. And then this guy who has a, you know, bit more than 1.4 times pots is left, goes ahead and sacks off. He's gonna have a lot of two pairs, a lot of flush draws plus gut shots, etc. He doesn't really need much because, you know, he gets a really good price, and he might think that I was gonna fold. And here's like the point where I really have to decide like what to do with the hand. I have a backdoor straight draw and a backdoor flush draw, or a bunch of backdoor straight draws and flush draws. So I do go ahead and make the jam here, you know, basically putting the pressure on him if he has those weaker over pairs plus flush draws plus no gut shot, and thinking that I'm gonna have the over pair plus nut flush draw, which I'm, you know, basically representing here, and then just praying that he doesn't have the set. And then he actually ends up having ace, king, 10, 10. Quite frustrating for, you know, a player who plays 89% to show up with a top set here. And then also not only have a top set, but also block a king, which I needed, and an ace, which I needed. I mean, I'm going to have a lot more equity if he doesn't have the ace and the king. Ace, king, 10, 10, the worst hand that he could have. Obviously, in hindsight, you know, quite a speculative shove here. But, you know, maybe you guys can see why I try to win the 240 that's out there by risking 570 and trying to put in the pressure on this guy. I mean, he was probably not going to fold some of the hands that I wanted him to fold, such as queens plus a flush draw, because I actually didn't have the flush draw. If I have the nut flush draw plus the overpair, I actually want him to call, of course. But yeah, this is the biggest punt of the 100k hands that I actually got in super bad. But overall, as you can see, when you go to the results, looks quite smooth. A little bit of a downswing here in the end, and here a little bit in the middle before I started working more with solvers. I'm gonna be looking forward to more hands to put in on Twitch. Gonna continue that doing on Monday. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of my 100k PLO hands. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also leave some comments in the section below if you want to see something change. And I want to let you guys that I'm leaving to Prague on the 8th of December for 1 week to play some cash games, either for, you know, on PokerStars cash games and Party Poker. I think they both have some cash games going down there. And if you want to have some updates, follow me on Instagram /AndreasFröhlich to get some Insta stories and pictures coming from Prague next week. Thanks, guys.